as we jump into the top left of Furious Resolve. It is the red Infernal player. This is Elf. And in the top right of Furious Resolve is our blue Vanguard player, who goes by Percival. Delightful, delightful. One of the things that I hope that you already notice is with our content upgrade, we got a replay update and an observer update. I'm so happy because we got the scoreboard. Beowulf doesn't have to completely hardwire everything into the game anymore. It's beautiful. Loving it. I mean, big shout out. The production for that was spot on. Very, very good. But it is so nice to not have to worry about all the extra things when we can just hop into the game and we can just have a ton of fun. But Furious Resolve is a 4-player map. Players can spawn in any one of the 4 corners. And right now we have gotten, not a cross spawn. Cross spawn would be down here. We've got the top corners, left and right. So one of the things to note on the overlay itself is that the icons have adjusted just a little bit. So food for both players, the supply, we've got a loaf of bread, we've got a piece of meat, we've got Luminite, we've got Therium, but we also have the energy for both of the top bar abilities here. The Vanguard, it's just a Wi-Fi signal at this point. I love it. Got to make sure the signal is strong. Bigger the number, stronger the signal. But we also have Animus for the red Infernal player as well. So those numbers are do function a little bit differently for both factions. Of course, with the Vanguard, you can only have 100 points total for that. The Animus number for the Vanguard player is going to be significantly larger. But both of these players are going to be able to spread out on the map here. This is a lot larger map. These camps are still going to be rather impactful to try and take. Elf is pretty adjacently close to the speed camp. There's a lot of discussion on this map of the placement of all of these different camps and how the opponent can best utilize those camps. But with the spawn that we got, I mean, 4 players rather close to each of the speed camps. So speed camp is going to be useful. This health camp is actually going to be something that gets fought over at some point, I'm sure. But take a look here. We see Percival starting to make a big push here. Hangar Bay coming out for our Vanguard player. Central Command was researched rather quickly, and we are now going to see some air units coming out for Percival, which is kind of interesting here. I mean, we really see a lot of that in the Vanguard versus Celestial matchup, where Hornets are actually very, very good against Prisms. But we can see Hornets being incredibly useful for this matchup as well, as they do bonus damage through air. And they are just kind of fast and speedy in general. But Elf is going to work on getting those camps. That is going to be a slightly different positioning for both players, where Percival has focused on kind of staying a little bit cornered back, using this choke point here, because there is no backdoor entrance to this. Yes, there are trees, but that is a ledge hiding back behind. So this is the only entrance in and out for the players here. And focusing on that tech as it comes along. So there's going to be a scout coming from Elf, using that Skull of Shedda to jump into the Luminite line. Is going to see, actually has scouted that Hangar Bay, utilizing that solar habitat to boost the production of that unit by about 25%. And we now have a Hornet just moving across the map, trying to do a little bit of scouting, just check where that army is, checking some of those key locations. We do have vision turrets out at the center of each side of the map, but those, I think, are not going to play nearly as much impact in this game, simply because both of our players sit on the high side. Now it is going to be valuable. It's not going to be completely unimpactful, but very, very useful in a different way. From Elf, we are getting a largely Gaunt army. Gaunts did recently get a buff here. They are going to deal a lot of damage against light armored units, which those Hornets are in fact light armor. Not nearly as impactful with the Infest, as the Infest status effect has been adjusted just a little bit, requiring units to be on Shroud for them to be impacted by the Infest. But because of that, the damage that they do to light units is a little bit more strong here, as Elf is going to be able to push this Hornet scouting group back and forth. I mean, I'm really not finding a whole lot of edge here for Percival, who is trying desperately to maybe engage this army just a little bit, catch some units out, punish the army that gets a little bit separated. But Elf's doing a really nice job of staying connected to keeping the army largely grouped together. And those Gaunts are providing a decent amount of DPS right now. We do just have a Greater Shrine, so Ritual Chamber is really the only thing that we have going. Plague Axe is done, Reaper's Rush not quite there, and it's not currently being researched. So these Gaunts aren't quite as fast as they otherwise could be. Maybe they'd be able to chase down these Hornets a little bit better, punish them by being a little bit out of position. But instead, it's just going to be a jump up all the way to the top. We have a high command here by Percival. That tier 3 tech on the way. We're just going straight up to those helicarriers. That is incredibly impactful here, because it's still only just a 2-base Vanguard player, honestly. And I mean, we're looking at like a 69 to 59 supply as well. So this is just a very, very quick dive here into what will be very strong tech out of Vanguard. Ooh, I do like this here, using those Gaunts, kind of divide and conquer, trying to get on top of those Hornets, but the Hornets are going to be able to zip out. Shadow Flyers are going to be a nice addition to this as well, as they are going to be able to do some splash damage onto those flying units. These, not quite going to get over to scout out that helicarrier, but that helicarrier count is going to need to be scouted here soon. Elf is... it's kind of maybe getting to a point where she needs to kind of make a statement on this game number 1. I mean, both players trying to feel out where they are, not really overcommitting one way or the other. But I think now Percival has decided this is going to be the moment here. This shrine, third base shrine, has been harassed. Unfortunately, it is a build out towards her opponent. Holy cow, that was a loud set of bombing runs here, but that just shows you the impact that these units are going to have. The Gaunts aren't going to be nearly strong enough to deal with this on their own. The helicarrier has taken a little bit of Shadow Flyer damage. That is going to shred its armor for a decent amount of time, but once that comes back, this is going to be a very, very strong unit that has to take a lot to get pushed down. It's going to come at the cost of the third base of Elf, but one helicarrier does fall. The second one, I think, should be able to go down there. It does. So it is a bit of an exchange. It's not a crazy difference on the overall exchange, but the reality is, I mean, Percival needs to find a way to continue to hamper his opponent, who has been on 3 base for a decent amount of time, and he still just very cleanly on 2 base here. In fact, doesn't have a whole lot of workers. What is it, 16 Luminite workers? Oh, now pulling out those units to go build that third base out. So this will be an important moment here for Elf, who looks like she's going to try and go take those Shadow Mastiffs. Getting that speed camp really allows her to kind of dodge in and out of that third base. But honestly, she's at a point where this is super exposed, and you're not really getting harassed on the other side of the map here. I would expect her to just dive on in, and that is exactly what's going to happen, using that speed camp to kind of propel herself forward. Didn't get that speed buff. Oh yeah, she did. It did. It's just not showing up on the UI. It's just gonna zip on through. You'll get a decent amount of damage, but the other side of the map, Hornets are going to harass that third base as well. I think Elf is in a little bit better position here if she can shut down this helicarrier, which once again does have some reduced armor from those Shadow Flyers. Oh, we do have a Graven kind of chilling outside. I mean, this is just all sorts of crazy tech here from Percival, who did lose third base. I think it did get canceled. It's not a full kill. Did get his resources back, so could easily take the workers back over to get that base kind of resecured. But now we do see a use of that effigy here. The effigy is going to be kind of a pivotal unit that we want to keep in mind. for these gaunts as the Shroud allows these units to be infested, and now we can see that that unit is able to get infested here, and that one mighty helicarrier drops a singular fiend. Just one, just bloop, drops it on the ground. Very, very nice. Loving that. We got an 88 supply to 71. We do have those hidden Graven. I kind of like this. They're playing around with the textures here a little bit of those cloaked units, and this is what we've come out with so far. Kind of very nice. I like it. It's a little bit shinier, a little bit easier to see, especially from the Observer tab. Ooh, looks like Elf is going to try and get out to a fourth base location. Percival now getting back to his third base, and both players kind of drew back a little. Going to be this is classic. We rush out tier 3 tech. We get those helicarriers. Try to do everything we can to kind of settle in and maybe push down our opponent. And then suddenly Percival's like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just go for some tier 1, tier 2 tech. Get out my bio units, go back to a more stock standard human interface. Should be kind of good. Oh my gosh, these Graven just zipping around here. They have a little dash that allows them to kind of push forward and get out in and out of range. They can engage but disengage really, really well. Shadow Flyers, though, do function as a detector. So as long as these Shadow Flyers are a part of this army, this unit will be seen. But the moment the Graven takes a shot, it does reveal itself for a brief amount of time. So a little bit different than a cloak unit from StarCraft 2, let's say the Dark Templar, if you will, which always remains hidden in the. But we can see Elf, supply-wise, has exploded. 133 to 99, laying claim to this vision camp. As we start to transition towards a little bit later part of this game, we get to that 12-minute mark, and we'll start to see these vision camps become a little bit more impactful. The players are going to start expanding to the bottom left and the bottom right. We can already see Elf, who has really kind of secured herself on that fourth base location right now. Percival doing his best to kind of anchor in here. Just now getting a biokinetic slap at the 12-minute and 30-second mark. Are you telling me that there isn't one already? There isn't. So we don't even have any upgrades for these bio units like the Lancer upgrade, the kinetic. I'm not gonna blow it. I'm not gonna blow it. But it's something. But we don't have the Exo upgrade. We don't have the Graven upgrade. We don't have any Lancer upgrade. We got nothing. We got a lot of mech. And we got a lot of air. And that's about it right now. So we got Spriggan as well. Spriggan got recently the recipient of a buff in the recent patch. Deals a little bit of bonus damage to heavy units, but it also slows units. So it does a little bit more impact as a status inflictor than it does as an air-to-air combat unit or an air-to-ground combat unit. But we have Weavers here. Look at these Weavers walking over top of small units. That was missing the entirety of this previous patch, and now Elf can utilize the range of these units. They deal pretty decent damage. It's like a percentage of health done per hit, which is pretty good against a unit like the Vulcan that's got a larger amount. But also you've got that pull, you've got the ability to move a lot faster on the Shroud that's provided by this effigy. This is going to be kind of a dangerous interaction here for Percival, who is down almost 50 supply here. Ooh, having that yoink canceled. Good stuff here. We do have a giant engagement going into this third base location. This is a make or break moment for Percival. Oh, the edge of the screen. I'm so sorry. It got away from me here. But what you are going to end up seeing is the Vanguard Slayer going down in tremendous fashion right now. Supply dropping. Elf able to utilize these Spriggans to deal a crazy amount of status damage here. And that is going to be it. GG is called, and Elf in game number 1 comes out swinging. Starts the series strong. Okay. Well, thank you for the nice compliment. I appreciate it. I prefer hotkeys, but I'll take it for now. You know what? Hey, progress is progress, baby. I love that. Seriously though, big shout out to Frost Giant. who have, as of late, have been just demonstrating a lot of reception from the community, both positive, both negative, constructive, otherwise. Really trying their hardest to incorporate things that the community has deemed very important. The RTS universe needs to be important. So big shout out to them. Thank you. I know I can't even imagine what being a game dev is like. It's got to be long and tireless and thankless at times. So big shout out to them. Because this is what I was talking about with these trees here on the right-hand side. A worker can actually knock those trees down, and it just provides for a little bit different ins and outs into bases here. So Elf actually utilizing the opportunity to knock down those trees herself so she can get to this speed camp just a little bit faster. And oh, okay. Well, you know, we didn't really address this specifically, but I guess we gotta let it fly. I suppose this is still not working as intended. These are supposed to be leashed, but it was discovered in the previous patch that those could actually get pulled away. I guess it's still that way. But Percival being a good person, not trying to utilize that in a cheeky sort of way. We did get a fast expand from both of our players here. Going for the early command post from Percival. Oh, Elf actually going to capitalize on that early pull here to take some of these camps. I mean, these camps do provide not only resources for the player that kill each of those creep, but it also provides a little bit of global bounty as well. So the speed tower does provide a 10-second boost. It's significant for the players that are inside of that, as long as they control that tower. Not to mention that inside of this little marked bubble, as long as Elf owns this space, she will have vision of anything inside of it while it is maintained under her set. But these gaunts actually being quite aggressive here, quite annoying. Percival is just kind of laying back. I don't know if Elf is really in a position where she can push up into the Vanguard base. Vanguard does have some good tools at their disposal with the sentry posts. Sentry posts actually get a little bit of a buff. They don't take quite as long. I mean, congratulations. That's how you know you've made it in the RTS world. You have bunker build time buffs and nerfs. I love it. I can't wait for the next year and a half of we made it 1 second longer. We made it 1 second shorter. That's how you know you've arrived. How you know you're there. But that sentry post is rather strong, and with the Lancers being able to provide additional support from inside, I think that would provide for a very precarious situation for Elf if she decided to jump on in. But decides to back off once we get that vision camp. Kinetic redirection. Aha! That Lancer upgraded that allows Lancers to increase attack and movement every time they are damaged. That is going to be rather impactful here. It's going to allow these Lancers to be a little bit more aggressive towards those Gaunts who pre-upgrade can do a really decent job engaging with those Lancers, and that is a significant difference from the previous patch where it almost felt like they couldn't be a part of that fight at all. But the kinetic redirection is something that Elf is going to have to respect here, so she does back off. The third base is going to be spotted and going to be harassed here a little bit. Elf is going to have to respond to this. There was one Brute. I don't know where that Brute went, but the Brute's right up there at the front, just kind of hanging out here. One Brute, not quite enough. So very good splitting here by Elf to try and mitigate a little bit of the damage here. Percival does have to back off. No Exos as a part of this army just yet, and it doesn't appear to be any on the way at this point right now. It looks like Percival actually going to try and take a third base of his own. As very, very bold play here for the Vanguard player, who is going to take the aggression all the way into the house here. The third base is not that set into place. Oh my goodness, these Lancers able to get a decent amount of damage. They're completely spread out. All of these Gaunts have been singled out by these units, and now suddenly they get picked off one by one, and they're not able to fight together, and that leaves Elf very, very exposed here, dropping a meat farm here at the exposure to try and maybe soften a little bit of this blow, but now this third base is just wildly exposed a very, very difficult position for Elf to try and get back into. A Shroudstone is going to try and be built, but I feel that is all going to be for naught. The Percival just has way too much here to sustain, and these Lancers continue to get some veterancy. They get additional armor, they get additional health, and they get completely longer standing in this part of the game. In fact, this Lancer is going to scout up here and realize, wait, there isn't that much production happening here for Elf. Elf is kind of up a creek right now, and the paddle is floating away really, really fast. This is not entirely done and out, but this is starting to look a little rough here for Elf. Elf is going to try and stabilize here with the summoned Shroudstone. This is temporary, but it is very potent to try and push away opponents. And finally, that is going to be the case. But what does that leave for Elf? It leaves Elf with an opponent who is able to secure a third base location. We were able to get a mech bay out. Vulcan are going to be on the way as well. Control of the map, that's been ripped away. So what's going to be the next option here for the Infernal player? We do have a Greater Shrine. Reaper's Rush is on the way. That had to be sacrificed for a very, very long time here while Elf was trying to just stabilize her third base. But that is really kind of showing in her lack of ability to be able to really engage this army. These Lancers can just dive in and back and forth. They take a little bit of damage. Sure, that's fine. But they speed up and they're able to zip around and create so much chaos for the Infernal player. And just unable to match that with the lack of Reaper's Rush. 30% increased movement speed is a lot. It's significant. We're going to see an FG go down here. The Plague Axe is going to be able to do their job, but is there going to be enough DPS here in general? The Medtechs are so powerful as they're able to heal down these units, and they soak up so much damage as well. They are very, very tanky. The Vulcan coming in from the backside of this army to provide additional support as well, and Elf is in trouble. There's still no stationary defense here. This Shroudstone is great, but it's temporary. It's not going to be around forever, as it was just brought in, and the shrine, unable to be repaired or healed, is now going to be very, very exposed here as it does get tapped away at. If this base goes down, this is going to be very, very difficult damage for Elf to try and recover from. These brutes are very helpful here, but they are not going to stop that third base from being assaulted. Weaver finally shows up at the end. Guys, I'm here, let's push! Getting one pull on this Vulcan, but is it too much? I fear that it is going to be too little too late. Percival continuing to double down on this push, continuing to shove forward. There aren't any Exos in sight. No Exos, no problem for Percival. The man with a gun, how about a robot with a gun? Percival decides that's the better option. Elf is going to try and get a third base here, reclaiming the third, taking the fourth. But this is going to be a nice little rotation. Percival should be able to find that fourth base. What do we have on the backside of this? It's just more additional Vulcan. We don't have a machine bay at this time. There is a hangar bay that is going to start pumping out Hornets. That will be additional damage. The fourth base getting canceled. There just isn't anything here on the left-hand side to help anchor this down. We don't have any Hexen on the way. We don't have any Hexen upgrade as well, so there's no miasma to help deal with this. It's only Weavers, it's only Brutes, and a few Gaunts to try and anchor this back into place. But as more reinforcements come across the map for Percival, this is starting to become more and more of a losing battle for the Infernal player, who is trying to duke it out here. These Weavers are strong. They've got 580 health. They have 145 on their white shield health as well, and they deal a ridiculous amount of damage to these heavy units. You know what? Elf trading out as best as she possibly can here, but this is starting to look worse and worse as the Shroudstone does get picked off as well. The meat farm getting dangerously low here. We have a Hornet being healed. The Nano Swarm dealing some additional healing as well to those neighboring units, and as it continues to fly around, it's just continuing to bring more and more health to everything around it. Percival is all over Elf's base. There's more Percival here than there is Elf. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see the tap out GG and Elf exiting game number 2. So both of these players, like I mentioned at the very beginning, competed in the very recent Stormgate Nexus tournament that took place over on a Behemoth's stream. 8 players invited We had 8 players qualify, and I believe both of these players qualified for the event. I don't think either of them were invited. It was awesome. And one of the notable games, I was actually very lucky to cast the opening match of the event, and it was Elf versus Probe. Probe, very good player, had recently won one of the other Stormgate showcase events, and Elf came into it and was just like, I'm just happy to be here. Like, I'm going to get 4-0, or it was a best of 5. I'm going to get 3-0'd by Probe. NBD. No big deal. I'm just here to have fun. And she wiped it. It was awesome. It was so great. And she got it done and hopped into the Discord chat at the end. It was like, wait, what? Huh? I wasn't supposed to win that. And made it into the top 8, which is awesome. Percival as well, making it into the top 8. For the life of me, I'm so sorry. I don't remember who Percival played. But obviously, like, making it into the top 8, you had to win at least one series. And that's a good thing. Love that. So both of these players are playing some very strong Stormgate. Now, talking about this game specifically, an imp coming across the map here. There is this middle section that is isolated off. Oh my gosh. Disco party. Kind of zoned off by trees. And this becomes a very nice Luminite camp. But what it also does become is a very quick expedited path for you to get into your opponent's base. It's very, very good. But it is also very important that you know when or if this is happening, because otherwise the alternative is you just go all the way this way, kind of like what Elf is doing right now to get over to your opponent's base. It's a long distance, but this can add up over time, especially if you are kind of caught off guard or aren't really paying that close attention. Percival played a laser, and they had a nice game on Boneyard. Make sure to ask our good friend Beowulf how he refers to the Boneyard. I don't want to say it. I just don't want to take it. I just would hate to do that. Hey, Elf, think of the health tower here on the left side of the map. This is actually a really nice position to hold. This health tower does provide a decent amount of sustain for an opponent who wants to harass the natural of their opponent's base, because you can do a little bit of damage here, kind of dive back in, dive back out, and just like a normal situation would, completely opposite thing happens. Takes the health, camp, and just runs away. Very cool. Very cutesy, very respectful, very demure. You know, all these good things. Ritual Chamber coming up to get some of these Gaunt upgrades. Right now, they just deal flat damage, no infest, to be found, no plague axes. And these Lancers actually don't trade ridiculously well against this unit composition here. It's a little bit of the change that the Lancer underwent in the last content patch, that it absorbs the damage in a little bit different way. And I don't remember exactly the numbers. Someone in chat's going to post it. I'm going to trust them, because you are all heroes, and I appreciate you being my co-caster from many, many miles away. But what it results in is this opening exchange where Gaunts can deal a little bit more direct damage to those Lancers without it feeling as if the Lancers are way overpowered or the Gaunts are way overpowered. It's a little bit more of an even exchange, which we like. Makes the opening just a little bit more interesting. So we do have a Greater Shrine, tier 2 tech here for Elf. What do we have? We do have a tier 2 as well for our wonderful Vanguard player, who is going to harass this third base location. Elf opting to take the third base at this double Luminite location compared to the traditional, well, I say traditional third base location on the top there. But this is a lot further forward, very exposed. Does provide a lot of resources, though. Double Luminite Mine can add up over time, especially if you get into a brute-heavy army. But these Lancers have a good avenue that they can choke and deal a decent amount of harassment and damage, really forcing Elf to stay busy without being able to macro super freely here. Shroudstone's going to go down. These imps do have to evacuate here. They don't want to just take free damage as Percival continues to run around. There are more Lancers on the reinforcement path here as they do dash across the map. Health camp does get retaken back on the opposite side. We have a mech bay, more than likely going to start pushing out Vulcans are going to be a nice addition, and we've seen so much more volatility out of the Vulcan damage with their adjustments to their ability to be able to dash forward and deal some line of fire damage, not only with a stun wherever they land, but being able to kind of jump on top of their opponents and soak up a lot of damage. Speaking of damage here, Lancer's going to try and engage, deal some damage onto the squishier parts of this army. They're trying their best to zip around and avoid those big brutes and get onto the Gaunts, because the Gaunts are so low on health. They don't take a whole lot of hits before they fall apart, and every Gaunt that goes down, that's Therium that is also sacrificed as well. And these Lancers, all they take are Luminite at this point. So anytime you can trade Luminite for Therium is just a fundamental good exchange in an RTS game. Trade minerals for gas in StarCraft 2. Great. Love that. Trading Luminite for Therium, beautiful, just as well. And this shrine has been really harassed here. I mean, we're down under 20% health for this shrine, and there is no way to heal this shrine up currently. It doesn't restore its own health over time. There is no way for imps to repair it up. It's just stuck at 353. That is the most it's going to have going forward. Look at this little sentry post here. This is a wall of trees that actually can be pushed down, and all it takes is a Vulcan. Vulcan can push right through here. We do have meat farms going down to try and provide a little bit of wall for this shrine, but it is so vulnerable. This is going to be a difficult hold for Elf. Elf really needs to maintain this third base. It's not going to be game ending if she loses it, but this is a very delicate moment here. That meat farm hanging on by a thread as the Repair-O-Matic goes down as well. All of these sentry posts can have a bio unit slip inside of them, and it provides a different buff as it goes along. The Repair-O-Matic allows these units to be repaired. The Weaver grabbing that Vulcan. Get over here. But it's just going to walk back, be the beneficiary of a Nano Swarm. That third base was just hanging on by a thread, and it did get sneezed on and falls over. But these Weavers are going to be able to force an engagement here, continuing to pull that Vulcan. The Vulcan really going to benefit with this army by standing in the back, but instead there's not a whole lot here to actually deal damage to it. The Vulcan's going to be able to deal damage, and the longer it fires continuously, the greater its damage does in a straight line. Only now, finally, will that Weaver be able to pull that Vulcan completely out of position. But the damage has been done. Percival has been able to really wreak havoc on this position. And with all of these units, I mean, it's kind of hard for Elf to really be able to throw down that third base in this little choke. I mean, she needs the ability to maneuver and try and position her units. So instead, her imps are being forced. They have to long distance mine. But Percival's got a third base. We have a machine lab. The hangar bay is down. We still only have a central command, so we're still only on tier 2. We're not going to see any helicarriers quite on the horizon just yet. But all of the pieces are there. We have all the ingredients. We just need the recipe to be executed. We don't have a whole lot that can really deal with this strong, bulky army here. I mean, all of these heavy units. The Lancer's heavy. The Medtech is heavy. The Vulcans are heavy. We do have the Weavers, which are going to deal bonus damage to heavy, but really that's about it. Magmadons can be good. Magmadons do bonus damage to heavy. They also have the Demon Hoof Tremors that that allow them to stun those units and prevent them from being able to be as efficient as humanly possible. But even still, those Magmadons need to be in greater supply before they're going to be incredibly effective against this army composition. But the lack of Exos here does provide that potential for Magmadons to be impactful in this game. Weaver kind of gets caught out, honestly just gets tickled a little bit. Not anything too crazy happening there. There is no third base to be harassed at that lower location right now, so Elf really doesn't need to invest a whole lot to protect it here, but Percival is going to see that third base go up to the high side of the map. And now all of a sudden Elf has to make a decision. She needs to be able to protect that third base, but the army of Percival is plenty in supply down here. There's an Atlas as well. It's all heavy units for the Vanguard player. And that is something that is going to be very difficult to be dealt with. I'm so sorry. There's a Hornet. It's not oops all heavy. It's oops all heavy with an asterisk at the top. Good Hornet. The evac is even heavy. That's crazy. I love that. Dude, this supply block is really putting a chafe in Elf's, I don't know. Hurry up, get along, you name it. 114 to 115. She can't build meat farms fast enough. She can't get her supply secured fast enough before she completely maxes out her supply once again. So she's going to build as much as she can. These Magmadon's going to try and get as much damage as possible. Demon Hoof Trevors will be able to stun these units just a little bit, so that way they can apply some sort of status damage, but they need to find actual damage beyond the status infliction here. These Vulcans are slowly getting picked off one by one. The Weavers starting to do their job, pulling things in. This is starting to go a lot better here for Elf, who suddenly has had a nice little swing here. Look at that supply plummet for Percival, who's down to 95. He has to run away. I almost wonder if the lack of Exos is starting to hurt just a little bit of his positioning here. Now all of a sudden Elf is kind of on a run. She has the Shroud thrown down. That's going to provide some additional white bar health for the Infernal player. What a swing. Elf, so patient, so kind, waiting for the moment to strike, waiting for Percival to push in just a bit too far, and now she's on the offensive, but there is an Atlas, and the Atlas will provide some decent damage, but not if it gets picked off. This is starting to look very, very good here. Ooh, the in-air mine from the Hornet dealing a little bit of damage to those Spriggans, but the Spriggans are able to push those back. Suddenly we have the army of Percival completely getting pushed off. Everything is over here on the right-hand side. There is the Atlas being shuttled back and forth. That's useful, that's helpful. Able to get some shots off, fly around and zip, but Percival needs way more damage than that here. Now suddenly Elf, with all the momentum, with all of the positioning, is going to be able to pressure this third base. This is a dead third. There isn't enough here. There isn't enough that Percival can get done before this is going to be completely annihilated. All of the Bobs getting pushed off of the Illuminite line. Those are going to be taken care of. The base is done. The tech is done. The Machine Lab was allowed to finish Plasma Arc, so this is now going to leave a little bit of a DOT on the ground, so that does provide a lot of extra damage, but look at the supply. 127 to 68. This is just all falling apart for Percival. Elf has got to be feeling really, really good right now in this game number 3. So patient against her opponent. She's still on tier 2 tech. PG is called. And with tier 2 tech, he takes control of the series 2-1. What exponent? I would like to inform you that I'm a band teacher. I'm not a mathematician. So thank you for your question. All right, chat. Check out the secluded grove. Very beautiful this time of year, right? Now, I have gotten this question a couple of times on my stream. Rushi, the game looks so dark. What have you done? Well, first off, shout out to Maybelline. They use beautiful mascara and eyeshadow. But that's not what I use. I've actually set the brightness to like 69%. Feel free to respond however you want with that. I think it kind of makes the game look a little nice. But you know what? I'm not going to lay credit to it. Shout out to Winter Starcraft. That was like the first day of the early access. His video, that was like number 1 or 2 in his video. Was like, here's one of the things I changed immediately in Stormgate settings. And he moved it down to 69. And I immediately went, nice. That's good. Chat, how dare you? Interesting. Meat farm, right? Like, there's nothing inconvenient about this. Oh wait, actually, hold on. Like, Elf might be cooking here. I think there is a little bit of an inefficiency with the workers that get caught in the middle. Maybe that fixes it. That's cool. I believe there's a reason for it. Let her cook. Let her cook, chat. Hey, so once again, Elf getting out on the map right away. Taking the slimes. Making them do some time. Showcasing. Oh, hey! That doesn't look so bad. No D12 bug here. Love it. Looks great. We are going to see an Iron Vault coming down. Very, very interesting. It was actually Conclave first, which allowed Elf to get the Gaunts out early on. I guess I shouldn't be like assumptive. Iron Vault produces different units than Conclave, so they both produce what we call biological units. But you're going to get a lot more of the heavier units from the Iron Vault here. You're going to get Brutes, you're going to get the Magmadons, you're going to get Hellborn, a little bit more bulkier units versus the Conclave, which is going to provide you with Gaunts, it's going to provide you with Hexen, a little bit lighter, a little bit more mobile units. So typically, a lot of Infernal players right now go Iron Vault first. Largest advantage is that it doesn't cost any Ethereum to make the units or the structure. So the fact that the meta is shifting maybe just a little bit towards Gaunt first consistently feels like a noticeable thing, something that we want to watch. Elf going to take a really, really early third base here, getting it before the 4-minute mark. Really, really nice. That is one of the advantages that you can get when you take these camps early on. So like I said, all of the camps have creeps, and the creeps have a predetermined amount of resources that you can get. Mostly Luminite. Some of them do carry Therium, like this energy camp here. The oozes do provide Therium upon killing, and it's an instant resource. So one time, instant resource for the camp that gets taken down. Then the longer lasting global effect is usually just like a status, we'll call it. It's like vision or energy regen. I guess there is the Luminite Tower and the Therium Tower. So yeah, that does provide resources in that regard, but it is very, very specific. Yeah, if your ooze has Therium in it, I'm not a doctor, but please consult your doctor. Very true. Okay, Hellforge is coming down here, and actually, these are both of the upgrade facilities for Tier 1, just being put right out front, which is a choice. Not the choice I would make, but it's a choice for sure. Opposite side of the map, Percival is just kind of settling in here. These Lancers running around, doing a good job. They're speedy. They're speedy gentlemen. They're not men with guns, but they're men with swords. They're doing their best. Imagine Cloud Strife running around the map. Gonna bully a Brute into a corner there, but not really gonna find a ton of damage otherwise. The Gaunts and the Fiends trying to wrap around and force these units into a never-ending fight that will result in the end of their fight. Third base being able to be taken at this time as well. And we are gonna see a Magmadon earlier on here for Elf. So now the question becomes, what does Percival do to respond to this? Because in the previous game, it was Magmadons that ended up being the end-all of his final push, because those Magmadons trade so well against Lancers. They do bonus damage against Heavy. They aren't taking bonus damage from the Lancers, who don't do bonus damage to Heavy. It's just the whole thing. The Exos provide the solution to that. It's just a matter of whether or not Percival wants to go into that direction. Now, the Magmadon can stun pre-Demon Hoof Trevors, but it does lose out on that stun. Fortunately, though, Magmadon does have that upgrade. Lancers, though, able to get onto those backline units. They deal so much damage to those Gaunts once they have their upgrade. And now we start to see one Magmadon trying to anchor down the situation here. The Lancers do have enough speed with the kinetic redirection upgrade to allow them to zip around, and that Magmadon doesn't provide the same level of support by itself. So in this moment, Percival able to get some decent damage done, kind of harass those units, and once again, you're taking units that are predominantly Luminite, and you're working down, even though they're not super expensive, you're working down Therium units. It's a good exchange for Percival, provided he can make it expound going forward. Elf, on the other hand, is just going to kind of stabilize. She loses out on some units, but that's fine for her. She didn't really take any economic damage. So Infernal units are able to be respawned rather quickly. They are in very, very quick resupply, provided you have the supply. And right now, Elf is not feeling the crunch of a supply block, so she is able to start reproducing some of those units, provided she's got the energy and the resources to do it. But Percival likes this setup here. We're getting Lancers, we're getting Vulcans back out. Medtech's providing, again, additional support. They provide a little bit of offensive and defensive. Not only do they do a little bit of their own ranged damage, it's small, 5 damage, attack speed 2. So it's not a lot, but they do provide a heal. It's not a continuous heal like a medevac in StarCraft 2. It is in little bursts. But they do also provide a ability called Nanoswarm that allows a unit to do healing to itself and surrounding unit. Oh, are we saying hi to Gerald in the chat? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Hi, Gerald. There you go, chat. You can all say hi now. Beautiful stomp. Too bad it didn't stun anything. These Lancers are going to be able to surround here, and this is what Percival has been doing very, very well against Elf's army, trying to single out these units so that way they can't fight in a clump. That is a problem. That is a problem for Elf if she's not able to corner these units off. This is a little bit better engagement here for Elf as she is trying to utilize all of her different Magmadons here in the center. She's been able to get off so many stuns here, and every time she stomps onto those Lancers, the Lancers have to stutter, they get slowed down, and they take a tremendous amount of damage. Look at this Magmadon, it continues to hang on here, only now it finally goes down and is able to be deleted. These Vulcans have provided the stability that this push needed. Only now are we seeing Elf really kind of getting control back. It's only going to be enough really to back off and regroup. And this is one of the changes that I have seen for Vanguard that I am really personally, like, outside of the unbiased nature of being a commentator, I really kind of like, because it's promoting that unit diversity again, right? We're not just seeing, oh, oops, all Lancers, oops, all Exos, or just Lancers and Exos. We're getting tier 1 units. We're getting tier 2 units. It's a little bit of that diversity that provides for not only a stronger play style at the later sections of the game, but it's just a little bit more entertaining to watch. Am I right, guys? I love it. I love it. So both players here are going to take that 4th base. Elf already kind of situated a little bit lower on the supply right now, 100 to 112, but she does have a little bit of a setup right now that can propel her forward if she can get her economy situated. We are starting to see additional conclaves getting added on. 2 Twilight Spires here for Elf. That's really, really impactful. We haven't seen tier 3 yet out of Elf, and I'm going to stay on this Greater Shrine for at least a little bit of time. Maybe it'll be useful. These Weavers, very helpful here, trying to find their way onto these heavier, a little more expensive units like the Vulcan, and I'd say even the Medtechs, honestly, because the Medtechs are tanky. They only have 200 health, but they are tanky. They soak up a lot of damage, especially a lot of the damage from the Gaunts. Nice little run by here by the Fiends, trying to use these akin to Zerglings. They don't quite have the same sturdiness or the same lethality of a Zergling, but still very annoying to deal with. That is going to open Elf into an exchange here in this lane. This actually kind of works out for this Magmadon. The Magmadons, if positioned correctly, could just kind of charge down, but there's only one right now. And the Weavers don't really have the same aggressive playstyle that the Magmadons might otherwise have. So Percival able to continue to capitalize on this. And if we want to talk about utilizing an alleyway to your advantage, speak no further than the Helicarrier. Helicarrier being able to use that bombing run to deliver just crucial damage. And as the Gaunt count continues to rise here, this becomes a complicating situation here for Elf. Elf's got to be very, very careful here as she is going to jump on top of this Helicarrier. Suddenly now Percival is going to have to deal with this. We have one bombing run go through. I think it dealt a little bit of damage here, but not quite enough to own this engagement. We are starting to see the Nanoswarm utilized on those Helicarriers, and they're large, so that that reach is going to be significantly more impactful compared to putting it on a Lancer or a Medtech as well. But there is so much damage happening here for Elf. She's not going to get any major kills here. These two helicarriers have remained largely untouched. Another bombing run. You can see how it softened up these gaunts. They have so little health left. A third helicarrier comes into the fray. We start to see more bombers added in. They do have to be built, so they aren't innately ready to go. The helicarriers do have their armor shredded here from these Spriggans, from the Shadow Flyers, but there's just nothing to deal with them, and Elf's supply dwindling very close to that double digits. There it drops down. The last Weaver is going to fall, and only one helicarrier in exchange, and now suddenly Elf's left with nothing. There's no army. There's a handful of gaunts and reinforcement. There is an additional base that's gone down, but what does she have as a response to this army supply here? There's gaunts. That's it. That's it. There's a brute. Wow. It's amazing. It's a great exchange here for Percival, who has also managed to take his own base in the top left-hand corner. Being able to respond to the helicarriers, so crucial if you're the Infernal player. I think Shadow Flyers are a good answer or response to that scenario, but it has to be more aggressive, and you have to be way more daring to get the damage done that needs to be taken care of. These Hornets are going to try and find little damage here and there, start picking off some army. Now one of those Shadow Flyers able to capitalize on to one of those exposed units, but I don't think at this point Elf should be utilizing the Shadow Flyers for anything other than the helicarrier. Shadow Flyers do provide a little bit of splash armor shred. So as you're going to see, this now has reduced armor, and it is significant here. It allows those gaunts to deal a little bit of damage, but the bubble soaks up so much damage, 1,000. For an example, oh, that's not quite as loud, but that's still a very loud bombing run. Ooh, we got Sky Mines as well. Sky Mines are going to do a nice job of zoning out those Shadow Flyers, as they will destroy those Shadow Flyers if they do come into contact, and the Shadow Flyers do not have any sort of air attack. So if they make contact, they will just fall apart. And Elf is going to try and make a run at it here using those Magmadons. There is no tier 3. Did we ever get an Elder Shrine? We did, but we are just starting to run out of resources. The main has been mined dry. These Magmadons trying to push this army back. This is about the best moment that we've seen here for Elf, as Percival is in retreat. These bases have been saturated, so the army counts can be reproduced here. We see more Lancers coming out. I feel as if we need to find some more of those air units. Those have been very, very lethal against Elf, but Elf all of a sudden starting to make a switch here. Unfathomable. We're seeing Elf make a pushback, and suddenly it's a supply shift, 185 to 159. Now, this is still a very lethal 159, so don't write Percival out just yet. But this is all of a sudden, a very scary army. Suddenly, the Infest utilized in the best way possible. Being able to produce those Fiends, get some additional DPS. We've got Imps coming over here to this base. I think they were just trying to long-distance mine. I wondered if maybe they would be using the Flame On ability to attack these Bobs, but instead, nope, they're just here to grab a little Luminite and see ya, I'm getting out. The Hornets on the right side of the map trying to find a little bit of damage, but really not finding anywhere to get in. Suddenly we have a Bob overcharge, and this is now a very, very important moment here for Percival. He needs to try and hold both the supplies over the 200 mark. Spriggans coming on in and utilizing their slow to keep these bulky units as far back as possible, allowing these Gaunts to do as much damage as possible. The Bombers are cloaked. They cannot be attacked right now, and they deal so much damage to those Gaunts, they just rip them apart. And these air units are very, very exposed. They do need to eliminate each other, and it looks like these Hornets are going to get a way better exchange than these Spriggans. As long as we see these helicarriers alive, Percival is still in this fight. This base is very, very low, though. This command post is going to go down, so that is impactful economic damage that has been dealt. But Elf is starting to run out of steam here. She doesn't have anything to deal with these larger air units of Percival. These Hornets continue to provide additional support. They are drawing in Shadow Flyers, which once again, I think those Shadow Flyers should almost certainly be looking for helicarriers whenever possible. The Spriggans have been pushed back, and Percival suddenly with a 178 to 130 supply difference in this game. He does lose the base in the top left, but has the overwhelming army advantage, and he has a lot of siege. I keep clicking that silly thing. My goodness. These wild supply swings are so impactful here in this game, and Percival trying to drive the knife in. He takes the bombing run. Good dodge here by Elf. She does still soak up a lot of damage, but she does manage to step out of the way. However, it might be just a bit too much softening of her army. These Gaunts are now at half health here. We do see some Atlas trying to find some additional damage as well, as they do land on top of a good chunk of the army on the high side. The splitting by Percival here, trying to keep all these air units alive. Very, very micro-intensive for the Vanguard player. Elf starting to run out of a little bit of steam. She does have a decent amount of animus, can use that to top bar ability some of her production structures, could even use that to try and build a dragon, but she just doesn't have the resources. The dragon not making an appearance yet in this game. 700 Luminite, 700 Therium, and 150 animus is what it takes to get a dragon out onto the field, and we just haven't had the stones in the right place to make that happen yet. It's very, very good engagement here in the center, as Percival is playing very, very safe. He has this army that honestly could, this could just go and win. This could just go and push, but the defender's advantage for Infernals is still very, very strong. The ability to drop Shroud Stones and deal impactful damage to these vulnerable and very expensive units of Percival is so, so important, especially as they try to fight over the center here. The base did get shut down in the center, and this ground army is going to try and push on. This is another very important moment here. Elf needs to try and get some more damage done onto these helicarriers, but there's just nothing that can touch those right now. The Gaunts are actually on the high side here. They are now able to start engaging onto this helicarrier and find some additional damage, but it's just overwhelming. The med techs continuing to provide additional health. The Hornets, this is just such a mobile army that is being microed so delicately. And Elf, despite her best efforts here, trying to dodge every which way, she's just gonna fall short in this final push here. Percival finally has enough. It's 181 to 100. You never want to accidentally throw away an army, especially in Stormgate. You want to play cautiously. There's money on the line as well. But I'm starting to think that Percival has done enough. GG is called, and Elf has to tap out. We've got ourselves an even series here. All right, Chad, I want to see who you cheering for. Let me know. Oh my gosh, that just so sensitive. Who you cheering for, chat? I see a lot of people cheering for Elf. I want to see those Elf fans and Percival stands in the chat. Making some noise for your favorite Stormgate players, as we are going to get ourselves a nice little setup into this game number 5. Now, Lost Hope is a 4-player map. Now, before the patch on Thursday, I would have told you that there is a little bit of a quirk with this map, where if you spawn right here in the top right, it's a guarantee that your opponent would not spawn here. That was just the logic with the randomization, the quote-unquote randomization of the spawn locations. But it was just no horizontal spawns. However, today, I was laddering, and I spawned in the top left, and wouldn't you know it, my opponent spawned in the top right. So I don't know if that's a bug or a feature. Maybe somebody in the Frost Giant universe could tell us, hey, that's actually a thing that's changed. Or maybe it's one of those like, that's interesting. They added horizontal. Okay, beautiful. So that does provide some interesting engagements here, because this is a breakable wall and this is a backdoor into your opponent's base. And right now, theoretically, I'm gonna push my glasses up a little bit. Elf has a little bit of an advantage in terms of the placement versus her opponent. So it's not monumental, but in a game of like centimeters and millimeters, everything adds up. The GX12 bug. Look, it's a techno party. I won't make that joke anymore, chat. For this game. All right, Elf gonna try and hold down this health tower here. I mean, this health tower, especially against Lancers don't attack super fast. So the buff off of this health tower actually does provide a substantial amount of stability for her to kind of hold that position, especially since she dropped that meat farm kind of in a good choke. That's not going to allow Percival to really push forward. So very good positioning for the Red Infernal player. Now, biggest difference here. There's no second base. Percival has decided it's command post or bust. Right now, we are going to get kinetic redirection, but this is a much different approach. Elf has opted to get 2 base, now getting the Iron Vault second. The Lancers are kind of zipping around the map and getting a little bit of damage done. This is a late natural. This is a late natural. Why? Why is this so late? This is going to haunt me. So, what we have going is just a lot of posturing, posturing on the map. Percival is now in game number 5, taking the position that Elf has taken in the previous games, getting these camps, benefiting from the early resources, benefiting from the buffs that those camps produce. And this is actually going to be a really exposed moment here. Kinetic redirection is done, and we know that these gaunts are incredibly weak against these Lancers once we have that set up. This is a very important moment here for Elf. Elf is going to lose all of these gaunts, and this is a very scary turnaround here. Elf had her entire army out in the center of the map, and every single unit is gone. Every single one of them. Percival has owned the map control in game number 5 here so far, but that is a fleeting thought if he's not able to turn that into a capital gain. Because Elf, back behind this, able to take a 3rd base and really just kind of secure herself in that route. And this game's just kind of turning a little bit slower in general. We're starting to see that tier 2 jump here, the Greater Shrine coming up. There is a central command already for Vanguard, so we do have that tier 2 tech there. But other than that, like, this has been largely like creep camp central. The Lancers have done so much damage. Now, this is actually a good opportunity. Veterancy. It's a thing. There's a lot of oh, okay, sorry, Disco Party. No, I said I wouldn't make the joke anymore this game. There, you guys can enjoy it by yourself. There's a lot of different approaches to how people feel about veterancy. But look at the advantage here. These units, because they've been able to be a part of fights and stay alive, get additional health, they get additional weapon damage, they get additional armor, and it all stacks over time. This makes a huge difference when you start looking at armies heads up. Elf is always working with a flat set of statistics. Whereas Percival, because he's able to take these early game fights, he's able to develop this army and make it a little bit stronger. It's now not required for him to have an explicit amount, a number of units. These units can now fight a little bit more robustly simply because they have additional stat points in their back pocket. And largely because he's been so aggressive here in the opening of game number 5. And that's going to put Elf on the back foot here, as these units are going to try and dash on up. They do get caught here on the left-hand side. Elf pinching this army from running up into the main base. This would have been a devastating amount of damage if Percival was able to get up in there. So good job by Elf cornering her opponent off and not preventing that damage from taking place. Percival, though, is going to try and get a 3rd base in the back corner. And it is rather protected. That's one of the nice things about Lost Hope, is it is a large map, but it does also promote some really good macro play. You do have this pocket 3rd, does have a nice Therium mine, it does have a nice Luminite mine. I think we're gonna get ourselves a nice full macro game here, game number 5. So happy. I'm so happy. Do you know what's different this time, chat? You know what's different? Man, gun. And then immediately done. Yeah, but only one is not going to be as impactful as it could be. There is a hangar bay. And I don't see any air units just yet. We still are on Central Command, although now we are going up to that Tier 3 tech. So, more than likely going to be making a jump to those helicarriers once again. And this army of elf, I mean, we've seen that the army of elf is susceptible to those helicarrier plays. Very, very difficult to deal. This army going to try and utilize the high ground advantage to surprise her opponent, but not able to capitalize on that quite yet. In fact, it does result in a turnaround here. We do have a Vulcan. Vulcan has been veteran seed. Will deal additional damage, especially if it to stand right there and deal an insane amount of line of fire damage. But this Magmadon has been allowed to zone the weaker units so far, so Percival's going to have to back off. Again, we are just kind of waiting for that third step to get there. Getting additional barracks. The Central Command is almost fully expanded. We actually don't have Quick Draw Hustle at this point, which we've not seen Percival take maybe at all in this series. I think that's a safe thing to say. Once they're kind of stuck in front of the brutes right now, those do not want to be caught in there because, again, those lands are just going to tear through that weak underbelly of the army. And the Vulcan is allowed to step forward here. That's going to need to deal a lot of damage the longer it's able to stand and fire. 2 Vulcans just is double the damage output. And we start to see Elf completely fall apart here. That Weaver is going to have to, I was going to say run away, but I mean, it's crawling away at this point. Fortunately, a little bit of Shroud, it manages to speed that back up and push things in the right direction. But we are starting to see Percival really close down. The medtechs provide so much sustain and support. It is crazy how much damage they can extend in these armies here. The Weaver gets pulled after doing all the pulling. And Percival is really, really bullying his opponent right now. We haven't seen that hangar base start the process of producing helicarriers. We do have that tier 3 ready to go. So that is an option that's on the table. Machine Lab as well. So we're going to start seeing those upgrades. I don't believe we have the Vulcan upgrade yet. No, peak performance hasn't been researched yet. That is a tier 3 upgrade for the Vulcan. Allows the Vulcan to jump and immediately have its full fire round. So if you're not familiar, the Vulcan takes, I actually don't know the exact amount of time, but it takes a certain number of seconds to spin up all the way and be able to deal the full amount of damage. I'm sure, like, I haven't been watching super closely, but I'm sure Beowulf has been helping me out, being my statistician in the chat. So shout out to him. I know he's there. Like, I don't have to look. I know he's there. He's my homie. He's my ride or die. Find your ride or dies, chat. There's your life lesson from Rushi. Find those people, keep them close. Survival protocol is being researched here for those Exos. So Exos not an accident for Percival's army here. Survival protocol is going to allow those Exos to survive with one last health. It's like an Endure in Pokemon, but the giant jump forward here on this army. Weavers are going to force the engagement here, kind of pulling this Vulcan around and stunning it and not allowing it to really do any damage. And it had all the veterancy, so that had the biggest amount of damage. But suddenly we find ourselves shifting up, and then we shift back. We're so good. Magmadons are going to be able to get on top of these Exos, but that is why the Magmadon has been so difficult to use in this engagement pre-patch, because those Exos are so strong against heavy units. It doesn't take very long for those to get set down. A stasis drone getting dropped onto the Weaver prevents it from being a part of this fight. It can be attacked. That stasis drone only needs to take a little bit of damage and it frees up the unit, but it is a ton of misdirect that you really want to be focusing onto your enemy. And then suddenly Percival able to capitalize on all of those very expensive, very bulky units of Elf. Elf has been trying so hard. She's secured her 4th base, her Luminite base in the pocket. She's tried to maneuver herself out here, but these stasis drones are just so overwhelmingly powerful, and they are preventing her from being able to do what she wants. And Percival has been able to run away with this. In fact, he's got a base in the top left-hand corner. I really don't want to leave this fight, but you can see on the minimap that he's already expanding. Went ahead to get further ahead. He took that advice. He ran with it. And suddenly we have an Atlas here. Atlas is going to be able to siege up in just a moment, and suddenly this will become a very, very delicate position here. The Ritual Chamber is under fire. That's going to limit a little bit of the pathway, but I believe all of those upgrades have been researched. We did get an infest down on these Exos. That does make their armor go away, and it does make them susceptible to spawning fiends. But I think, once again, it's just too little, too late, and Elf has to tap out. We find ourselves looking at match point in the face as Percival secures his third win in the series. All right, Elf. You've shown us in 2 games of this series that you can do this. There was a lot of chatter when this show match was announced that Elf was just going to get swept. 0-4. Get her out. Percival's got it. A lot of chatter. But just like Stormgate Nexus, Elf proved she deserves to be here. She is in it. She's in it to win it. She belongs here. And dang it, we're going to put some respect on her name. Who was chattering? No. I'm not going to call anybody out. I'm not going to point fingers. I'm just going to say. We're going to watch an Infernal player cook here. But Percival's got to be careful. Percival can't just rest on his laurels. I mean, a couple of games that got away from him, he wasn't getting the production taken care of the way that he needed to. I feel like the addition of Exos in game number 5 was probably a strong choice, just to deal with like Weavers now all of a sudden are a little less unruly to try and manage. The Magmadons, for sure, are very dealt with if you've got Exos as a part of the army. But I think it was a good adjustment for the Vanguard play. But can he do it one more time and prevent this from going to a game number 7? I do like that. There's some, like I love a good hotkey. I just like clicking things too. It's one of my favorite parts of playing an RTS game. You just get to click stuff. Clicky all day long. All right, so we do have an early biokinetics lab coming out for Percival. Once again, I mean, a lot of that is just going to wrap up the kinetic redirection upgrade, making those Lancers just a little bit more versatile in the opening onset. Because right now, like one of the big things, ignore the lights, ignore the disco party. One of the biggest changes that I've noticed playing a little bit of Vanguard is that these opening camps are a lot more sturdy. They deal a significant bit more damage. I mean, it's not the previous patch where you could get 5 or 6 dogs and just kind of shred through them in the blink of an eye. Now you need 2 or 3 Lancers, and you got to juggle them. Like you can see here, this Lancer's very low. This one's got about half health. This is a much more involved opener. It's not as straightforward as it was before. Oh, this is bold. This is a bold engagement here. I mean, the Lancers deal decently with these fiends, but with these units so low already, there is a little bit of veterancy here, but clearing that unit is actually going to be really, really good for Elf, and Elf does manage to grab that Lancer with the veterancy. Now suddenly, like, Percival, what are you doing there? This does have a circle that completes all the way here. So Percival will be able to benefit from the health regen there. That's a very scary moment. I mean, if Percival gets out of position, suddenly he loses all of these Lancers, and there's not much stopping Elf from just running on in. This now becomes a better moment, though, because Percival able to delay this vision camp. This is a very good amount of micro here by Percival. These Lancers have been healed up again. That health camp coming in clutch, forcing down another effigy here just to try and provide a little bit of sustained power for Elf. And Elf is going to lose her Hexen. That means she loses a little bit of infest power. She's going to lose another Gaunt as well. Every Gaunt that goes down, that is painful damage. Again, it's not overwhelmingly over, but that is a lot more damage than Elf was hoping to. She just wanted to clear this camp. That's all she wanted to do. And now suddenly she's having to run back to the opposite side of the map. She doesn't have a Hexen. She has got less Gaunts. And what to show for it? Maybe she grabbed a couple of those creep, but she loses the tower. So it's a sacrifice that we're going to have to see if it actually pays off in the longer run. I mean, Plague Axis is just about to finish up, so it's not as if it's completely stunted her ability to move forward. She's got a greater shrine. We do have our first Weaver out on the map at the 5 minute and 30-second mark. Like that is a great moment of high risk, high reward for Percival. We love seeing it. Love seeing that in StarCraft 2. Love seeing that in Age of Empires. Doesn't matter the RTS. If you take a great risk and you do well, you should be able to get rewarded for it. And Percival absolutely capitalizing on that moment. So third base settled in. I was gonna say for both players, but this is just like we're just chilling down here. Union workers, am I right? Am I? Ooh, we do have Exos once again. And we have Exos with quick draw hustle. We've got kinetic redirection as well. Central command. This is a scary hit squad. I know it doesn't look like a lot, but this is a scary hit squad. Especially against, well, I mean, there is a Weaver over here that can help zone maybe a little bit of this, but there's no static defense right now. The Fellhogs provide a little bit of extra damage output, but it is not a crazy amount here. Pulling one of the Lancers with high veterancy, that's going to be helpful because that Weaver is going to be best suited to deal with the highest health unit here. The Lancers and the Exos being separated, and that's nice and all, but I feel as if Elf needs to be able to capitalize on a little bit more damage output than what she's currently getting right now. Pulling in one of the med techs, that's helpful. That's going to at least cut down on the sustain power for Percival. Percival's smartly going to back off just a little bit. But ultimately, I mean, that's a pretty decent hold for Elf, who protects her Luminite line, actually getting that Shroud Stone out as well. Very, very good hold here from Elf. So as a result, Percival has to settle for taking that Luminite camp and continues to double down in different directions. We're getting a mech base. We're going to start seeing the Vulcans move out onto the map. Still just a central command right now. I don't believe we have a hangar bay or a mech bay that will allow, a machine bay to move us into tier 3 just yet. We are going to get a Wraith Stone, though. I actually like this move by Elf. So if you're not familiar, Wraith Stones are an upgrade from Shroud Stones that instead of offering a bullet, if you will, to fire, instead does radius damage. So if you step inside of the circle, and I don't have an indicator for it, I'm so sorry, you're not only going to take damage over time, but you're going to get slowed, and it is significant. So if you've got an opponent that suddenly decides they're going to try and run in here, you can get choked up and take a lot of damage, and your opponent can really capitalize on your lack of mobility. It's a very good power move, and it's kind of positioned in a good place where Percival's going to have to commit inwards on it. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that third base. We're going to fight over a vision camp once again. That vision in the center of this map, very, very crucial. We've seen so many good engagements in previous series on different patches, nonetheless. But this having control of the center still very, very important. But look at that. Look how small this army is and how it was able to just dance with this admittedly very large force. Are we seeing Hellborn for the first time? Hellborn, let's go. A little bit of siege here. Elf pulling out all the stops. We are getting up to an Elder Shrine. That is very, very smart. The Hellborn does provide some good splash siege damage, but the Hellborn really shines once it gets its tier 3 upgrade that allows it to spread fire and do a little DOT as a result of that. That's when I feel the Hellborn is at its best. So Elf is going to try and get that upgrade as soon as possible. And in fact, Elf is actually going to try and catch this army out here. This is a nice little hit squad that she can jump on top of. It's oops all gaunts right now, but the other army units coming in from the back side of this. They're going to intercept the Luminite tower and provide some additional support here. The Lancers has almost all been dealt with here. So now the Gaunts with their speed upgrade going to be able to zip forward. But look at the micro capabilities for the Exo. Exos are still strong. And in fact, actually now Percival is going to be the one that says, you sandwich me? Ha! I sandwich you instead. We've got Vulcans on the left-hand side. More Lancers. The Gaunts forced to dance with the Exos on the right-hand side. And the Exos are always going to be able to out-dance the Gaunts. The Gaunts just have 2 left feet, man. I'm so sorry. The stasis drone on the Weaver. That poor Weaver gets locked into place. It's not going to be able to help. It just stands there. I just have a lot of health, guys. Don't worry about me. Oh, and it just is forced to release right in the middle of the enemy. Oh, I had to zip away. I couldn't watch. That poor Weaver. Elf on the ropes here. The final shove for Percival. Can she make it work? I just don't think she's got enough of what it needs to be here. I mean, she's lost that health tower. That health tower is not going to be a refuge for her anymore. There's no static defense back at home. Weaver will get 1 good pull on a Vulcan, but that's going to be all she wrote. I think this might be our final moment here. Elf with an incredible showing here in this show match. Percival perseveres and takes the series 4-2. GG, well played by both of our players.